Hello, my name is Zeb Dempsey. I'm in the fall 2017 Intro to Computational Thinking class. I will be using the music dataset from the Corgis lab to study trends in music. Studying music to find more about its general trends can have an important impact in many ways. First off, the music industry generates a huge amount of revenue. In 2016, it generated $17.2 billion, and that number is projected to rise in the future. The music industry works similar to any other industry that creates a product. It tries to figure out how to make the most marketable product by studying trends in consumer habits to make a product that the most amount of people seem to want. Music is also used in other media, such as movies, advertisements, and the people making these also try to determine their choices in music based on what the largest population of their audience will enjoy. This is also important to studying the shifting cultural landscape as music holds a large importance in cultural identity. There are many stakeholders that this data would impact. That includes musicians who actually make and perform their music producers who put the music together in the studio, record labels who sell the music, the audience who consumes the music, ad companies, and then movie producers trying to choose music that their audiences will like, and sociologists studying music's impact on culture. This is the general structure of the dataset. It is a list that contains three main dictionaries: artist, released, and song. Artist contains all the information related to the artist that made the song. Release contains information about the album that it was released on. And then the song contains information about the song itself. I've simplified the graphic down to contain only the values that I used and a few other extras in order to fit the graphic on the page. This dataset comes from the Million Song dataset that was gathered by EcoNest and LabRosa. It contains 10,000 songs that were determined to be popular by those companies. This song in the dataset all comes from between 1920 and 2010. The data set is an abstraction of real aspects of the songs and their popularity among audiences into data that can be more easily studied and understood. The data that I'm going to use is the year, which is the year that the song was released, the terms of the genre, which classifies songs by their style, the loudness, which is the measure of the average decibel level of the song, and the duration, which is the length in seconds of the song. This dataset comes with a number of limitations. The collection of the songs only includes 10,000 songs that were determined to be popular, and even though that's a lot of songs, it leaves a huge number of songs that could change the results to reflect the musical landscape more accurately. A lot of songs don't have years attached to them, and by a lot, I mean a little over half of the 10,000 songs don't have a year on them. You also have to trust that the songs were correctly sorted into subgenres, first by the data companies, and then into broader genres by me later. And the other large problem is the data is collected very unevenly, distributed by year. This is a graph to show how the songs are distributed by year. The songs are almost entirely around the 90s and 2000s, which much less songs between the 60s and 80s, and barely any songs before then. So obviously that makes it harder to look at changes over time. My first question asks how the loudness or the average decibel level of songs has changed over time. In order to look at this, I looked at the average loudness of songs by decade from 1920 to 2010. As you can see, the loudness of songs has changed a lot over time. In general, music was a lot quieter in the 1920s. It got a lot louder in the 30s, then dropped off in the 40s, then it increased in the 50s with a slight plateau in the 60s, and then a massive spike in the 80s. Then in the 70s and 90s, music quieted down slightly, and it seems to be taking an upward spike when the data collection ended in 2010. My second question deals with how the three main genres that I classified, namely rock, hip-hop, and pop, have changed in popularity over time. There were some limitations on this data that made studying this kind of difficult. First off, because I had to define these larger genres based on many subgenres that the data set included. Rock taking the most subgenres, and hip-hop taking the least. But more importantly is the fact that the data is collected very unevenly over the years. That left me with two different methods of studying the data. The first was just to compare the raw number of songs in the genre over the time, and the second was to compare the percentage of all music produced in that time that is taken up by the genre. So this is the graph comparing the number of songs produced by decade. And this is the graph comparing the percentage of total songs that the genre comprised by decade. As you can see, rock was the most popular overall. Second, none of these three genres that I picked started to become popular before the 1940s, and hip-hop didn't show up in the dataset until the 1980s. While rock consistently grew in numbers over time, its hold over the music scene has slipped dramatically since the 1970s, with hip-hop growing consistently in both number and percentage of the music produced that it controls. None of the genres that I concluded ever took up more than 50% of the music in that decade, leaving a large amount of music not included in these three large genres. My third question deals with finding the most frequent duration of popular songs. So here's the graph for that. So most songs fell in the 200-second range, which is about 2.5 minutes. What was interesting is that there were songs over 1,000 seconds, which is over 16 minutes long. So overall, rock was the largest category of music, and it still was the most popular genre in the 2000s, but has been quickly losing popularity to rap. The vast majority of songs all ran in the 2 to 3 minute range, with relatively little music falling outside of that range. And in general, based on the information in the data set, music seems to be getting louder as of what there was in 2010. So that's it. Thanks for listening to the project, and thanks for working with me this semester.